Hi, this is David from AMA. I am today with Alex Hyde from BIE. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
Alex, as we both know, this is Mental Health Awareness Week, and we are taking at AMA a number of initiatives this week, and one of them is to have you for a quick session. Why you? I think we're going to explain in a minute to everyone, but before we start, Alex, you are, like us, a recruiter. Can you tell us a bit more about, what you do in recruitment? It's a big industry, as we know. So yeah. What do you do? Who do you work for? What's your journey in recruitment?
Okay, cool. Well, look, thank you very much for having me on. Absolutely delighted to be speaking to you guys about this subject, and a really good week to do it. So yes, I'm a recruiter. I have been since I left university in 2005. I joined Michael Page on their graduate scheme that year, progressed to become a manager there, and moved on in 2011. And I then joined Brewer Morris, who are part of the SR group, built a finance team out from scratch there in a specialist market called Treasury, and was there for 7 years until 2018. Built up a team of 6 people, and then moved to BIE Executive, where I am now. I joined in October 2018, and I now do more of a client-facing billing role, helping clients find CFOs and their direct reports. So I've done the team management leader piece, but now focus solely on filling roles.
Okay, so a sort of passion for finance, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say a passion. An interest in it, certainly.
And probably a big network nowadays.
Sorry?
And probably a big network.
And a big network, yeah. So it's an interesting space. We are seeing lots of demand at the moment. It's busy, and it's where my network is, and where I've got a lot of contacts. So yeah, it's a good place to be.
Okay, brilliant. Well, Alex, obviously, the reason we have you as a guest today is not just because you're a recruiter. It's also because you are, and you have been for a while, a mental health campaigner and public speaker. So I guess as an intro to our topic today, maybe you could explain or tell us a bit more about what got you involved into campaigning for mental health.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I talk about mental health because of my own lived experience of poor mental health, which actually led to me having a full-blown mental health crisis shortly after joining BIE. I think it's important to stress that before I struggled with mental health, I had not knowingly had poor mental health in the past, but I now look back at earlier stages of my life and career and can see times when stress, anxiety, and low mood had an overly negative impact on both my personal and professional life. I guess the event that really brought mental health into focus was in 2014. My wife was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a form of blood cancer, and she was actually diagnosed the week before our first wedding anniversary. 2 years later, she then passed away, and during that 2-year period, I'd been her primary carer, and I'd also been trying as hard as I could to put on a brave face at work and make sure that all the efforts to build out the team that I'd started there didn't go to waste. And I guess there was no way of kind of working that hard and burning the candle at both ends that wasn't going to lead to a period of poor mental health. But I didn't know that, and it wasn't until the summer of, when would it have been? Summer of 2017, about 6 months after she passed away, that I started really struggling with anxiety and depression for the first time. When it first started to happen, I had no idea what was happening to me, and thought I was losing my mind and that I'd never get better again. I took some time off work and went onto medication, got some therapy, and thankfully started feeling better again. got life back on track, and decided to change companies. In the kind of meantime, I'd met someone new and fallen in love, and yeah, it felt like everything was coming back together again in a really amazing way, one that I couldn't have believed. So I'd started up at BIE. I just moved in with my partner maybe 4 months before, and we decided to start a family. We got the wonderful news that my partner was pregnant with our now nearly 2-year-old son. But we found out the day after the second anniversary of my wife's death. And that triggered really strong feelings of guilt. And I didn't really do anything with it other than just start feeling worse and worse and worse. I didn't talk to anyone and really sat on top of these emotions, which wasn't the right way to do things, but I didn't really feel as though I could talk to anyone about it. This was supposed to be, a happy and good stage in life. I was starting to pull things together again after a really difficult time, new baby on the way, just got engaged, new job that I'd started. And slowly I just started feeling more and more anxious over time. And this was all happening in the run up to Christmas, that I started to feel unwell again. And I thought, well, if I get to Christmas, then everything's going to be okay. I'll get to have some downtime and some quiet, and everything will improve. Got to Christmas, and Christmas is rarely the relaxing time that we kind of have in mind. Lots of family pressure, or not necessarily family pressure, but lots of family engagements, and I ended up going back into work the start of the following year, start of 2019, not feeling any better. Had drunk quite a bit over Christmas, as we can tend to do, and was in a worse place than when I'd gone away. And it really all came to a head on that first day back. I'd been asked to interview someone for a job in our team, and so interviewing a potential hire into the business. And I was so anxious that my brain wasn't working properly. I couldn't think straight, and I just felt the interview had been a total disaster. It had been fine, but in my head it had been awful. And so that evening I went home, and I was starting to really get incredibly anxious at this point, and was just thinking, if I can't interview someone for a job in our team, how on earth am I going to go onto a client pitch and win a retained CFO role and then interview all of the candidates for that? So in my head, everything was really spiraling out of control. I lay awake that night, couldn't get to sleep, tossing and turning, trying to find a solution to this. And I realized I really needed help. When the solution that my mind turned to was that I shouldn't be here anymore, and that was the solution, was to not be here effectively. So at that point, I realized that I really did need help. I called the Samaritans, and I told Sandra, my partner, what was happening. And she was amazing. And that was really the start of me getting better. We spoke to my line manager at BIE about some of what was happening. We didn't give them the full story at that time, but made it clear that I wasn't going to be able to come back into work for some time, and needed to take some time out, and ended up being off work for close to 4 months. I was under the care of an NHS crisis team for a period of that. But BIE were amazing during that time. They were incredibly supportive and gave me something to work back towards. They signed my probation off a month early. This was a big concern for me at the time that all of this was happening, was that I was on probation. I just started, so I really didn't want to speak at that time about what was happening. But they made it really clear that they hired me for a reason, that they thought I could be successful, and it was their belief that I might be able to get back, which enabled me to return a few months later. At my worst, I couldn't imagine ever going back into the city ever again. I mean, zone one, it seemed impossible, let alone back to work. But where are we now? We're nearly 2 years on, and I can honestly say I'm happier at work than I've ever been. I feel like I'm better at my job, and it's really becoming more aware of my mental health and what I need to do to manage it, and speaking to my colleagues and even clients and candidates about this subject. There's been a total game changer for me. So yeah, a bit of a long answer to that
what an
question.
answer.
And there's quite a lot to it, and yeah, I have no kind of problem being as honest as I have been about my experience, because had I spoken out sooner, I don't think I'd have become as unwell. And yeah, I'm really keen for people to understand what happened to me to prevent them getting into that situation. Because it really is only talking to people that makes things better. And the response that I got from my manager was one of kindness, which is what often happens in these situations. Is you tell someone that you're struggling and they say, right, well, how do I help? And things get better. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing, Alex.
Okay.
And good to hear that that you feel good today, and
yeah, thanks.
and that your mental health is under good watch.
Yeah.
If I may, if we go back in time, if you had to explain what was preventing you talking to someone, because it's one of it's obviously one of the key topics around prevention, is that many people can't find anyone to talk to. And would you say, you mentioned a few things in your answer, probably that feeling of guilt which maybe prevented you talking to close friends and family, probably the ones who knew your girlfriend. And but there was also the probation period that you mentioned that you were under. So looking back, do you think that there are maybe some important factors that prevented you talking to someone?
Yeah,
was
sure.
Something prevailing of the rest?
Yeah, so I think like my own stigmatized view of mental health itself. So I think I think one of the reasons that I didn't want to reach out for help was because I didn't want to acknowledge that there was a problem. Because if I acknowledged there was a problem, then I'd have to go and do something about it.
So denial, essentially.
So yeah, so I think there's certainly denial in there for from my own point of view of not wanting to necessarily have to face up to this weakness. But what I actually now see is that it's not a weakness at all. That by understanding that I do have these vulnerabilities, as everyone does, and that I can better manage it. And yeah, so I mean, I think there's certainly something in that. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but I mean, much bigger than that, and kind of more impactfully is not wanting to be seen to be weak to the outside world, not being seen to need help, because it's really difficult to know how people might react. And I think in recruitment, like in lots of professions, there's a big thing around building up our status and our profile within organizations and externally. And someone who is depressed or anxious, it doesn't necessarily kind of fit the mold of who we expect to see being successful in recruitment businesses, where
the champion, the warrior, those cliches.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we associate good recruiters with people who are ambitious and outgoing and really strong at building relationships, and the kind of person that everyone wants to talk to. And to go in and saying that I'm feeling anxious or depressed, it didn't sit comfortably. But it's been a real eye opener. Speaking about it since, because the more I have opened up and shared my story with people, the more other people have said, you know what, I feel exactly the same too.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
I've been through a similar thing. So you kind of, I found by speaking about it, you kind of have these like poof, like moments where the ego drops, the front comes to an end, and you actually end up having a far more honest conversation with people and building stronger relationships. So I'd certainly say, and we've got an ice cream van now in the background. I don't know.
Lucky you.
You can hear that. Why didn't I talk? Yeah, so I didn't want to acknowledge that I had a problem myself. I then really couldn't face the judgment that I thought other people would have of me, and the perceived negative impact that would have on my career.
I see. Yeah, as we, this week is all about awareness, and I can't help thinking that for many of us, there's also one side, which is probably around lack of knowledge or pure ignorance about mental health, and I think many of us, until something happens to ourselves or to someone really close, think that we think more about mental illness than mental health. So having gone through that experience, what do you think about that? Do you think that that there is still a lot of ignorance around what mental health is, and if you can help us define mental health, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think like lots of things. I mean, I think we're much further ahead now on this subject than we have been for a number of years. I think we're really living in an age where these subjects are being spoken about far more than they have been in the past. And is there some ignorance? Yeah, I think there's some, and I also think there's a bit of a changing of the guard within organizations, in that there's a new generation of people coming through into leadership roles who are far more comfortable talking about mental health than those that went before them. I think if you were to speak to 20 and 30-year-olds about mental health, you'd have a far more open conversation with them than you might do if you're having it with 50 or 60-year-olds who may have a tendency to clam up about it. But I think when it comes to the kind of big shift in the conversation that's really interesting and really great, is this kind of movement away from us talking about mental illness and to mental health. So a few years ago, there was a big drive to talk about 1 in 4 people struggling with their mental health every year, and that was really great because it gave us the kind of context, right? It's like if you're sitting around a restaurant table with your partner and 2 other people, meeting another couple, that means that year, one of you is likely to struggle with mental health. And I think that really gives us an idea as to how prevalent mental health, mental illness is. But the great thing that started to happen is people are really now not talking about 1 in 4. They're talking about the fact that everyone has mental health all of the time. And that's where this definition of mental health is really helpful, because we're starting to look at it in the same way as physical health. So we all have mental health all of the time. From the moment you're born to the moment you die, like your physical health, you will have mental health. And mental health is really about how well your brain is functioning from a cognitive point of view, but also from an emotive point of view. And if you don't look after your mental health as well as you could do, it's going to struggle much in the same way as if you don't look after your physical health, you're going to struggle too and become more susceptible to illness. So really what we're talking about with mental health being all of us, all of the time, and is prevention rather than recovery. Because if we focus on the 1 in 4 people who get ill, it's actually much harder clinically to get them better, and it's also far more expensive. Whereas if we talk about all of us, the 4 in 4, all having mental health, and we set up strategies and design workplaces and create cultures that are better equipped to look after people and ensure that their mental health is positive and good, you're less likely to have one person become unwell, and you'll also have much happier and more productive people within the business as well. So it's a great change that's taking place. Are we there yet? Like, no, absolutely not. But there are an amazing range of conversations that are taking place about it, and more that's being done. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a long way to go, but we are in a really, really good place, and it's conversations like this are just indicative of that.
Absolutely. So talking of prevention and the workplace, based on what you've seen so far, your experience, what can companies, we both work for SMEs, what can companies that maybe don't have, the budgets and the means of big PLCs can do to ensure that mental health, is being looked after in companies? What are the key things you would recommend? I'm the MD of a small SME, 70 plus employees today. If you were to be our consultant for a week, what would you check? Okay,
well, the great news is the answer is free. So it doesn't cost anything. It's essentially being kind. It starts with empathetic leadership. It's about really trying to understand what are the challenges that people in your business are facing, and listening to them and trying to find solutions to those challenges. I mean, I think there's no one answer to mental health. There is no one solution that's absolutely got this thing nailed down. If you look at the pharmaceutical industry, it's making absolutely billions out of medication to try and help people. And there's been a huge boom in the number of people that are receiving therapy. And so I think it's really important that companies don't try and find a tool or a system, or find one thing that they think is going to be the answer, because there isn't one. It's really about talking about this subject, trying to understand what people's challenges are, and being there for people. And I think, as I said, this is a really great conversation to be a part of. And what I hope that it does is encourage people within leadership roles and management jobs within your business to have more open conversations with themselves as a peer group, to show a bit more vulnerability, and to have conversations that are not too dissimilar not too dissimilar to this one, where we're having a difficult conversation about a subject that people find very challenging to talk about. We might say the wrong thing. We may say we might get the language wrong. We may get a bit kind of tripped up when trying to find answers to these questions. But the intention's the most important thing, and the intention of moving towards a business that does speak about this subject and tries to look after people is fundamentally the number one thing to do. And then there are a range of tools and services out there that can support people. Most companies do have access to an EAP, an employer assistance program, and they often don't make the most of them. Managers often aren't really aware of how to signpost people towards help. And so there are, there's a range of really simple, basic things that can be put in place to support people and support businesses.
Okay. One thing that I think we both know, and you covered, in your second answer, a lot of people struggle with talking. So I think creating an environment where people feel at ease, talking about their emotions, you know, is obviously probably the number one thing that one should do when running a business who cares about mental health. This is more a question, but you know, what do you think about what companies could do also with their management teams to work on identifying or seeing signs? Because as we said, people, as much as you open the dialogue and put people at ease, there will always be someone who doesn't want to talk, as you didn't want to talk about it to anyone. So how can we train people to try and identify signs? You know, is it possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit on a really important point, and one I was thinking about but didn't bring in, which is that this is about creating cultures that support people's difference. And whilst I'm very comfortable talking about my mental health now, lots of people aren't, and people should also feel free to not share what they don't want to either. It doesn't have to be an outpouring of everyone's experience, and there will of course be people who don't feel comfortable speaking about this to anyone. And I think that mental health first aid training is a really good place to start. It's not that expensive. It does come at a cost, but is really helpful to help managers understand what the warning signs might look like, changes in behavior. But again, it's there's lots of people, lots of companies that I've spoken to who have done mental health first aid training. They've said it's great. We've got all a number of people who've done this, and we're now done. And it's like, you're not done. That's a really good step, really important one. But then, how do you keep that live and relevant? And how do you support those people who have done mental health first aid training? Because the people who will often sign up to it are those who have experience of poor mental health themselves, or have looked after other people, and can often take on quite a big role, or take on a lot of responsibility if someone does open up to them. So there are things in place that can certainly support, like mental health first aid training, but it's not the finished article. There are a number of online platforms and charities that people can be pointed towards as well, where people can, where if an individual doesn't feel comfortable sharing, where they can, there's an outlet, and they can be then further signposted towards help.
Okay, thank you. I guess we have to cover that elephant in the room and talk a little bit about maybe not looking too much on at the past, but the pandemic has had obviously an impact on all of us, on our lives, for more than a year now. Rather than coming back on maybe what happened in 2020, most businesses, you and I are working from home, I guess, today. But I personally started going back to the office, every now and then, a day a week roughly, and getting ready for more. And I think many of us are progressively planning or implementing return to offices. That might as well have an impact on our mental health, because the journey has been one way, now it's the other way around. Do you foresee any mental health challenges, or just on a more personal level? Sorry, any pros and cons in going back to offices?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
with regard to mental health.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can I can talk about pros and cons for me, and I'm very aware that they'll be very different for other people, because what I've struggled with and really enjoyed about this last year will be very different to what other people have. So I think in terms of pros, I mean, I'm just really looking forward to seeing people again. I can't wait to just hang out with my colleagues, and have those kind of relaxed conversations that you're not really able to have over Zoom, because you're just staring into each other's faces over a screen. phone, which you'd never you wouldn't have had conversation the same way at all. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into seeing people. I'm really looking forward to seeing clients and candidates again, and getting back to that part of the job that I really enjoy, which is meeting new people, and getting that kind of real sense as to the strengths or weaknesses of a candidate, or attractiveness of a role based on a client, that you can only really get from meeting them face to face. It just feels quite transactional, our way of living at the moment. So coming out of that is going to be great. Not being stuck in the same room as well. It's going to be amazing. Coffees, lunches with clients. I mean, there's lots to look forward to. But I have been getting anxious about losing the pace of life that I've kind of developed over the last year, which has just been great. So I've got a son who's nearly 2, another one. We don't know if it's a boy or girl yet. We find out on Wednesday. Coming in September, and we've built up a really nice little bubble. So I've had breakfast with my son every morning for over a year, and it's been amazing. I'm not looking forward to having to rush out the door, rather than being able to spend any time with him or rush him to nursery. It's been really, really, really good. So I'm concerned about not having that and really missing it. And I think the pace at which we lived life before the pandemic, it was very fast, and you found yourself doing a lot of things, and rushing around at a pace that I guess I've questioned quite a bit over the last year.
I can relate.
Yeah, so I think it's really about, for me, it's going to be about finding a balance. And I think actually the businesses that are likely to get their people back and happier are those that try to understand what their people's needs are and look at how they can best provide them. I think that companies that are dictatorial and say that everyone needs to be in the office 4 or 5 days a week, and that's just how things are, may struggle to retain people in the future. I think that the best way to get people back into the office, as in my experience, has been the FOMO, the fear of missing out. So I've been going into the office more and more over the last couple of weeks because more colleagues have been going in, and I just thought, well, if they're going in, then I want to be there then, and that's just to see them, and that that kind of connection and contact is I think that's what is the kind of key for enjoying life a bit more, is to have that contact. So finding a way of balancing it is important.
Yeah, I think that's probably the key word, the balance. I guess it's only once you go back to an office and see colleagues that you realize what you've been missing on as well.
Yeah.
Because, especially we have 2 offices, one in London, one in Barcelona, and, London has gone through a more drastic lockdown. Yeah. So for many of us in London, it's been weeks and months without going to the office, and you get used to it. We are human, and we're really good at adapting.
Yeah, and I think that's.
But once you go back, that's how I felt. And as you said, we'll have to respect that it's different for everyone. Yeah. But once you go back, you realize what you've been missing on, and maybe everyone needs to find that right balance. Yeah, but absolutely. Going every now and then doesn't hurt.
Totally, and I think the weird thing about going into the office is you come to realize exactly the point that you just made, which is how adaptable we are as people. So you get back into the office and there's people around, and it's like you've never been away. It's really, really kind of strange how quickly we can do that. So I think there's lots to be said for going back to work. Then there's been some really good points or key learnings that we can take away from this last year, and trying as best as we can to hold on to them both is yeah, and that's what I need to make sure I try and do on an individual level.
All right, Alex, if you were to to decide for BIE or for MA, or more broadly for the economy, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that maybe you would do to move the dial on mental well-being in the workplace?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I think I don't have a set number in my head, so I'll talk about what I think the key things are, and we can maybe bullet point them afterwards.
Oh, yeah. If it's only one, we'll take one.
I mean, I think it goes back to the point I spoke on earlier, which is that the most important solution for this is free, which is empathetic leadership, and the creation of kinder and more supportive workplaces in which people can talk openly about how they feel. And that doesn't necessarily mean to say the creation of soft workplaces or places that aren't focused on high performance. It's I think being clear on those points and looking at how you can build teams that are supportive of more people within that. And it's, like I said, it starts from just having open conversations about this subject, understanding what people need to perform at their best. And if you look after people well, they perform well. If they perform well, they're more productive. And you get into a really good cycle with that. I then think the key to that is providing managers with the support that they need on mental health as well. So there's no point in saying we're going to create this and we're going to be supportive of mental health. I think it's having conversations with managers about what it is that they need, and about what tools it is that they think that they require to be able to have conversations with people in their team about this. And that could take a number of different shapes, from kind of formal training from external providers, and to working on a solution yourselves internally. So I think the first point is around creating this culture of kindness and support, and then the second point is really backing that up and making sure that the people within your business who are going to deliver this feel comfortable with it.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Alex. It's been a pleasure to share this moment with you. Before we go away, maybe I think I should give you the final word. We've been talking about well-being or mental health, in the workplace, but it starts with each of us individually. If you were to give us a few tips on how to look after our mental health best, what would they be?
Yeah, I mean, I think so key for me has been actually putting myself first. And so it's the oxygen mask on the airplane situation, right? If you're looking after, you need to look after yourself to make sure that you can best look after those people around you. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really down to individuals to look after their own mental health, rather than necessarily relying on people around them to do it for them. So we're talking about what companies can do, and they can create environments that are supportive, but really it's down to individuals to work out what their needs are. For me, that I'm going to do the full mental health cliche here and say that it's been yoga and meditation that it's really changed things for me. That doesn't mean that I'm a vegan yoga bunny, like far from it. But that's certainly what's helped me. So I think it's individuals finding what works for them. That's the most important thing. Yeah.